Hi students, this is Mr. Yao. Today we are going to continue to learn more about factoring. Today's lesson is about factor quadratics with leading coefficient not as 1. In the previous lesson we have learned to factor quadratic with leading coefficient as 1. So let's actually do a quick review. Here's a factoring problem. First step, always, we need to make sure to check for GCF. In this case, we see every single term at least has an x, and 2, negative 28, and negative 144 can all be divided by 2. So the GCF would actually be 2x. And after you take away the 2x, the whole thing is going to be simplified. Again, that means you're dividing everything by 2x. And we can take out the 2x. We would have x squared minus 14x minus 72 left. So we're actually factoring x squared minus 14x minus 72. And from what we have learned previously, I can just write out two parentheses because it's just an x right in the front. That means each parenthesis would actually get an x. And then I just need to figure out a pair of numbers that could multiply and get negative 72 and adds up to negative 14. Typically, we start with that negative 72. So let's actually break negative 72 apart. We can have 1 and 72. We can have 2 and 36. 3 and 24. 4 and 18. 5, nothing. 6 and 12. 7, nothing. 8 and 9. And then if I keep going, it's going to be 9 and 8 switch. And also because the middle number is actually a negative 14, which means the bigger number should actually have the negative sign. There we go. Now let's check which pair would actually add up to be a negative 14. Now, first one, that's negative 71. That's negative 34. That is negative 21. And that one is negative 14. That would be negative 6. That would be negative 1. So that's the only one. We're going to have a plus 4 and a minus 18 inside the parentheses. But don't forget the GCF, which is 2x in the front. So you see, when we have a negative 72, the number is kind of getting bigger and there are a lot of combinations already. And sometimes you might forget some of them. So what if there's a way that we could actually use our calculator to find to help us to find all the combinations? So let's find out. How can our calculator help with factoring? So I'm going to pull up a calculator here to kind of show you what's going on. Okay, let me move that to the left a little bit. Okay, so the first step will be to actually press y equals, because we are going to create a little function to help us to find things. So y equals, and we're actually going to use this screen a lot for the rest of the year. Whenever we actually want to check some graphs, we can always do this. This is how we actually do graphs. But of course, for this, we are not doing graphs. We're just creating a function. Then we're going to type in the number that we're trying to factor and divide it by x. So in this case, we're trying to factor negative 72 because that's the number we're trying to break apart. We almost never break the middle number apart because a lot of times there are too many combinations for the middle number. So we're going to type in negative 72 divided by, the x button is right here. It's x, t, theta, and n. So there we go, divided by x. And afterwards, we're not actually going to graph that function. So we're not just pressing the graph, but above that you see a table. So next we are going to press second and then graph, second and then graph. So voila, now we actually have some combinations that two numbers actually multiply to get negative 72. So you see 1 negative 72, 2 negative 36, 3 negative 24. You can track all the way down, and you can also use the up cursor to actually go back up. That means the smaller number would actually have the negative symbol. So you can actually check all the combinations. Of course, we're not looking for any number to have decimals. We're just looking for the whole numbers. But this is a quick way to kind of help you to find all the combinations. And then you can just do some mental math, try to add them together in your head to see if you can actually get the middle number. So there we go. That's a quick thing to use our calculator to help. We're going to use that again in some later examples. Now let's keep going with today's lesson. Just like previous lessons, I will always ask you to try to do a multiplication question so that we can actually get some big ideas. So let's say we want to multiply these two parentheses together. 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times negative 4 is negative 20x. And then we have negative 2 times x, which is minus 2x. And negative 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. They will combine to be 5x squared minus 22x minus 8. So let's quickly think backwards. What if I give you this 5x squared minus 22x minus 8? I'm asking you to break them down into two parentheses. Something to start with. You see, it's a 5x squared, and there's only one way to break down a 5. One of them has to be a 5x, the other has to just be a 1x. That's the only way to break it down. As for negative 8, well, negative 8 has a few different ways. You can have a 1 and 8, or a 1 and negative 8, or negative 1 and 8, or 2 and negative 4, or negative 2 and 4. The reason I'm writing all of them out is because even though the middle number is a negative, however, having a 1 here and negative 8 there, and having a negative 1 here and 8 there will give you different results because the front numbers are not the same anymore. So when you multiply, they will give you different results. And in that case, you see the combination suddenly doubled, especially when we have a negative number. It's a little bit harder to figure out in that way. That's why, but the basic idea is still the same. You're still trying to break apart the numbers. But you see, because of this, the front number also have an effect. So they both together, front number and the number on the back, have an effect on the number in the middle. So that's why we have to take account both the front number and the number on the back. Now let's have a look at a method to factor quadratics with leading coefficient not as 1. Today's method is called the cross or diamond method. So first step, no matter what kind of question you're doing, always find a GCF first. That is always your first step. In this case, there's no GCF. Then we're moving on to start setting things up. It's a cross or diamond method, so of course we're going to draw a cross. We're going to draw a cross and put A times C on the top because they will both have an effect on this middle number. So 5 times 8 is 40. And then we're going to put the middle number on the bottom, which is negative 22. Now, we're going to also draw fraction lines on the left and on the right. So these are just setting up. We're not doing any calculations yet. So that's how we set it up. The reason we're doing a fraction line is because we're trying to have something on the top and something on the bottom. And this left side actually represents the first parentheses, and the right side represents the second parentheses. So that's kind of how we separate things to start doing some calculation. Next, we're going to need to find all the pair of numbers that multiply to give you the number in the top section. So we're going to need to find a number that multiply to get you 40, which means we're trying to break down 40 now. Let's break it down. 40, a few different ways. 1, 40, 2, 20, no 3, 4, 10, 5, 8, 6, nothing, 7, nothing, and if you go 8, 8 and 5. And the middle number is negative 22, which means all the numbers have to have negative because they need to multiply and get a positive 40. So we are finding the combination that would multiply and get 40 and add up to negative 22. And it's pretty obvious. It will be negative 2 and negative 20. And we are going to write those two numbers. That is the next step. We're going to write those two numbers as the denominator. Because the pair numbers, just like when you were doing the previous lesson, they actually go after the x. So they're actually in the back of each parentheses. That's why we're putting them on the bottom of the fraction. So they're going to be the denominator of the fraction. As for what's on the top, it's going to be the leading coefficient with the variable. The leading coefficient with the variable. Because the leading coefficient plays a part now. It's not just x and x in both parentheses. You got to take account that number. So 5x on the top and 5x on the top. Now you have a fraction on the left and fraction on the right. Whenever we see a fraction, it should always be a habit to simplify the fractions. The left side you can't simplify. The right side you can. 5x over negative 20 becomes x over negative 4. So the sixth step is to simplify the fractions. Lastly, the left side is going to be your first parenthesis, so it's going to be 5x minus 2. And the right side is going to be second parenthesis, x minus 4. The reason we're simplifying the fraction is because, well, if you keep both of them as 5x, they will multiply to get 25x squared, but we only have a 5x. That's why when you simplify, you kind of take away that multiplication that you did in the first step, so that you actually still have the front variable and the numbers correct. There we go. That is the cross or diamond method. Let's do a few more examples. Example 1. Set up the cross On the top is a times c, so it's 2 times negative 12, which is negative 24. On the bottom, it's a negative 5. Then we draw fraction lines. Now we need two numbers to multiply and get negative 24. So let's break it down. 1, negative 20 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. If you keep going, that's going to be 6 and 4, so it's repeating. And because they need to add up to be a negative 5, that means the negative needs to be on the bigger numbers. So there's our combination, 3 and negative 8. As for the top is always going to be the front number, the leading coefficient, and the variable. So it will be 2x. Then, of course, we have a fraction on the left, fraction on the right. You got to simplify the fractions. I will simplify to be an x over negative 4. Lastly, we just need to put the left side and the right side into parentheses. 2x plus 3 and x minus 4. There we go. That is example 1. Example 2, same thing. Set up. Top will be 3 times 2, which is a 6. The bottom would just be the middle number, which is a 5. We need two numbers to multiply and get 6. Well, we could have 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. And they also need to add up to a positive 5, so both numbers would just be positive. And there we go. That's our combination, 2 and 3. And then we're going to put the front number on the top, 3x and 3x. Simplify the fraction. Here's the thing, because in each parentheses, you're going to have two terms. So for the right side, when we simplify, we still need to keep the 1, even if 3x over 3 is technically just x. But we still need two terms, so it's going to actually be x and 1. There we go. That is 3x plus 2 and x plus 1. In fact, the left side and the right side doesn't quite matter. You can choose to put the 3 on the bottom on the left and 2 put it on the bottom on the right. Doesn't quite matter because multiplication, 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. So you can switch them around. That is example 2. Moving on, example 3. Let's set it up. On the bottom is negative 62. On the top is 8 times 99, which is 792. So we need the fraction line. Ooh, that number is kind of big. So let's start reviewing how to actually use our calculator to help us. There we go. Let's type it in. Y equals, I'm going to clear that. We're typing in 792 divided by x. Then second and graph. Voila, that's all the numbers. But they need to add up to a negative 62. So right now you can see negative 4 and negative 198. Well, that number is pretty big. And if we keep going down, they're all becoming positive. So we have to keep going back up. Let's keep pressing, find some whole numbers. Negative 18, negative 44. There we go. That's our combination. They actually add up to negative 62. So negative 18 and negative 44. On the top of the fraction will be our 8x, the leading coefficient and variable. In this case, it's x squared. That's why each side is just going to have an x. If it's x to the 4th power, that means you would have x squared on both sides. So now we simplify the fractions. 8x over negative 18, they could both be divided by 2, so it's 4x over negative 9. On the right side, 8x over negative 44, they could both be divided by 4, so 2x and negative 11. There we go. 4x minus 9 and 2x minus 11. That is example 3. Moving on, example 4. Let's still use our calculator to help us to find a combination. But first, let's set it up. On the top, 24 times negative 35 is negative 840. Bottom is negative 22. So we need a fraction line on the left and on the right. Let's type in your calculator. Y equals, clear, negative 840 divided by negative 22. Second graph. There we go. We need them to add up to negative 22. Right now, these numbers are not exactly what we want. And that is actually weird. What is going on? Oh, it's not a negative 80. Type it wrong. It's negative 840 divided by x, not divided by negative 22. There we go. Okay, so let's check. Negative 35 and 24, that is negative 11. Not there. Negative 30 and 28, that's negative 2, so it's getting smaller, which means we have to go back up. Negative 40, 21, that is negative 19. Oh, there we go. Negative 42 and 20. Negative 42 and a positive 20. On the top, we need the leading coefficient with the variable. Now we need to simplify. 24x over 20 is 6x over 5. 24x over negative 42, they could both be divided by 6, so it's going to be 4x as negative 7. Final answer, 4x minus 7 times 6x plus 5. There we go. That is example 4. Moving on, example 5. I think this one we can kind of, the numbers are getting smaller. We'll try to do it without a calculator. Let's see. 8 times negative 15 is negative 120. On the bottom, it's a 14 fraction line. For negative 2 numbers to multiply and get a negative 120 adds up to a positive 14. That means the bigger number has to be positive. You can quickly figure it out, or you can try it with your calculator. The numbers have to be 20 and negative 6. On the top, leading coefficient with x is 8x. 8x over 20 simplifies to be 2x over 5. 8x over negative 6 simplifies to be 4x and negative 3. There we go. 2x plus 5 times 4x minus 3. That is example 5. Moving on, last example. This time we can see every single term at least has a t squared. Then we have the 10 and the 35 and the negative 20. So of course, first step, we gotta take out the GCF. The GCF in this case, 5. They all at least have t squared, so it's gotta be 5t squared. Take that out in the front, which means we're dividing every single term by 5t squared. We're gonna have 10 divided by 5 is 2. T to the 4th divided by t squared is t squared. Plus 7t minus a 4. So let's set it up. That means we need two numbers. Well, the top should be 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, bottom is 7, and the fraction lines. So we need two numbers to multiply and get a negative 8. You can have 1 and 8, or 2 and 4. Since they need to add up to a positive 7, positive number, that means we need the negative sign to be on the smaller numbers. And pretty clear, there's no combination, negative 1 and 8. As for the top, that will be our leading coefficient with the variable, so 2t. Now we can simplify both sides. The left side, 2t over negative 1, but remember, we have to keep the negative 1 so that we can have two terms inside the parentheses. Right side, 2t over 4 is going to be simplified to be a t over 4. Final answer, 2t minus 1, and then t plus 4, but don't forget, we still have our GCF in the front, which is 5t squared. That is the last example, and that is everything for cross or diamond method with factoring quadratic with leading coefficient not as 1. Thank you.